If you don't know the difference between these basic Portugal immigration terms, you could mess up planning your move from the US. Let's go ahead and fix that now. You'd be surprised about how many people already in the immigration process mix up these terms. And it's crazy because when you do, you can be talking about completely different things. You're going to feel like you're already drinking from a fire hose when you start planning your move to Portugal. So as an American living in Portugal, I'm going to break these terms down for you so you are less confused and you understand what to expect. Yes, this is one of those not so sexy topics, but extremely important for Americans to know. So let's go ahead and cover what I call Portugal Immigration 101, talking the terms. Briefly starting with residency versus citizenship. Okay, please don't confuse these when you're planning to move to Portugal. They're two completely different processes. They have different requirements, but they are related. So let's go ahead and start where the whole process begins, and that's at residency. Residency, simply put, is permission to live and work in Portugal. When you want to live and work in Portugal, you're going to start by applying with a residency visa. Now, know that there are different types of visas that you can apply under, like the Golden Visa you may have heard of, or the D8 or Digital Nomad Visa, or the D7 or Passive Income Visa, which is what I moved to Portugal under. But I'm not going to go into all the specifics between these visas. That's not important. Just do know that each one has different requirements, different permissions for your residency. So you do need to research in advance which one is best for you. All right, you have now decided which visa to apply under. Great. Whenever you apply for temporary residency with your temporary residency visa, this will be done in your country of origin. This applies to everybody. So Americans, you are going to be applying for this in the US. This is done through the BFS Global offices. I will put a link to their website in the video description below for you. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about the visa application process. Let's skip to that you've decided what type of visa that you like and you're going to apply through BFS Global. You've gone through the whole application process and they have approved your visa. Yay! Now you get your temporary residency visa affixed in your passport, and this visa will allow you to get to Portugal, and you will be moving into Portugal under this residency visa, which is typically good for 120 days. And under those 120 days, you'll be expected to apply for your residency permit. Now, let's assume in a perfect world that you were able to get your residency permit application appointment affixed in your visa, and that's how it should go. But it doesn't always happen for everyone. Case in point, it didn't happen for me. But when I did this process, there was a lot going on. They were switching from VFS to IMA. The NHR was ending. It was a complete mess. So when I arrived in Portugal, I had to keep calling the Agency for Integration, Migration, and Asylum, which is IMA, for my residency permit application. It was a bummer. But for you all, let's assume that your permit application appointment with IMA is already affixed in your visa. Fantastic. So when you land in Portugal under your visa, then you should already be prepared to know exactly what documentation is needed to get ready for your temporary residency permit application appointment with IMA. Here's a hot tip for you. You are allowed to leave Portugal within the 120 days while your temporary residency visa is valid once, and that's it, okay? So if your temporary residency visa expires, please know that you are not allowed to leave Portugal. Okay, so let's talk about the temporary residency permit. So like I said, once you land in Portugal, you should be getting ready for your appointment with IMA, get everything ready. Things keep changing. I can't speak to the requirements that are needed now for this application appointment, but let's assume you've got everything ready. You made it to your IMA appointment and it went successfully, and IMA has now approved your application for temporary residency. Hooray, you are now considered a Portugal resident. So what does that mean? Typically, your initial residency permit will be valid for 2 years. This means you are now allowed to stay and live and work in Portugal for 2 years. If you want to renew your temporary residency permit after 2 years, you are allowed to request to do so, and if it's approved, then it's good for 3 years. Here's a tip for you. You should know that under each 2-year or 3-year temporary residency permit, there are restrictions on how many days you're allowed to be outside of Portugal, so you should know this in advance. Here's another tip for you. It would save you a lot of bureaucratic headache if you would not make plans to leave Portugal around your residency application permit appointment, even if it is approved, because it's best to not leave Portugal until you actually have received the permit card in your hand in the mail. There could be emergencies where you could need to leave, but if you have proof that you've had your IMA appointment and your temporary residency permit has been approved, but I wouldn't deal with that. Just make sure that you have that card in your hand before you go anywhere outside Portugal. So this is helpful to know to planning up front in your timeline. How long it takes to get your card in hand, that I can't speak to. Hopefully it's within 30 days, but it could be longer. This brings me to Portugal residency versus tax residency. All right, please know that these are two completely different things. The first thing you should know is that if you are going to be staying in Portugal under your temporary residency permit for 183 days or more, you are required to apply for Portugal tax residency immediately upon having your application approved. Not waiting until you get the card in your hand, right after approval. And what this means for Americans, once you have your tax residency in Portugal and while you're still a US citizen, this means you get to now file taxes in 2 countries. Yeah, lucky us. To apply for your tax residency in Portugal, it's done with the Portugal Tax Authority, the Finanças, and you can do it online in the portal. It's super easy, and then again, that's another topic for another time. But just know that you need to do this and plan ahead. You need to know the date that you arrived in Portugal under your visa as the day that you started living here, and also you need to keep track of the day that your tax residency was approved as well. So this will be helpful when you're filing your taxes. All right. Let's go back to Portugal residency. Now let's talk about the permanent residency permit. Okay, you've been living in Portugal as a temporary resident for 5 years. After that's done, you do have the option, if you wish, to apply for permanent residency. This is also done through IMA. It's a completely different process though with different requirements. One of them being you have to pass the A2 Portuguese language test, among others. But it also has benefits in doing this. One is you can stay in Portugal for 5 years if you're approved, so you're renewing your permit less. I think it also allows you more time outside of Portugal, I believe. But there are many people who pursue this route after temporary residency after 5 years. And if you have your permanent residency permit and you want to keep renewing it after 5 years, you're allowed to do so and can continue to do so as long as you want to stay in Portugal. Which brings us back to citizenship. Okay, obviously there's different routes to apply for Portuguese citizenship. You can do this through ancestry if your grandparents are Portuguese citizens or you marry a Portuguese citizen, but you can also do it through naturalization, which is basically completing the residency process that you've already gone through. So yes, first, the United States does allow dual citizenship, so you can have citizenship in Portugal and in the US. Please know though, you do not have to apply for citizenship if you don't want to. If you have your permanent residency, you can just keep renewing that. It is not a requirement to apply for citizenship. Many people do decide to go for citizenship. It obviously has its other perks, one of them being you'll have 2 passports. Keeping passport separate from citizenship, not the same thing. Passport is a travel document. But if you decide to apply for Portuguese citizenship, do know, again, it's a completely separate process, different requirements. It's done through a different organization. And at this time, there is no consistent time frame on how long it takes. It can take some people a year, it can take multiple years. So go ahead and cross that bridge when you get to it. But know that applying for Portuguese citizenship after so many years of residency is allowed. Which brings us to some important changes that are actually happening now in Portugal that you're going to want to stay on top of if going for Portuguese citizenship is on your list. At time of this recording, the current law in Portugal is that if you want to apply for Portuguese citizenship, you are allowed to do so after 5 years of residency. However, last year there were some proposed changes to the citizenship naturalization laws. And one of them being is there is the desire for Portugal to get on track with many other countries in terms of requirements. And one of these requirements is extending the timeline of residency until you're allowed to request citizenship. So today it's 5 years, but the new proposed law is extending the 5-year residency to waiting to 10 years residency to apply for your citizenship. And this is for non-Portuguese speaking countries like the US. If you're from a Portuguese speaking country like Brazil, then they're extending the residency time period from 5 years to 7 years before you can request citizenship. This part of the proposed law has already been approved by the constitutional courts in Portugal. But there are some other aspects to the laws that have been proposed that are still being kicked around. One of them is, for example, they're trying to decide what actually constitutes the start of your residency period in your citizenship timeline. So basically, does that start when you landed in Portugal, when you initiated your temporary residency visa the first time? Or is it started when your first residency permit card was approved? So obviously there's a great deal of time between these two processes, so it matters. And we won't know, hopefully until the summer, we'll know what's going on and what they finally decide on this. But until then, just stay on top with the news sources. And also, now you have a really good understanding of what these terms mean. And now you know why it's so important to know and understand them, because it impacts your ability to plan and also know what to expect. And that's your Portugal Immigration 101. To help you start your relocation planning. It takes a lot of work to move to Portugal, and it's going to take more work once you get here, trust me. But by understanding these terms, you already now have a leg up on knowing what to expect and what's coming down the road. If you have any more questions though about this topic and these terms, please put them in the comments below and I would gladly answer them the best I can. I'm not a professional, I'm just an American living in Portugal, giving you my research and real life experience to help you plan smarter. So use CORR Travel as a trusted resource. And also use the links I have for you below for relocation products and services that I have used in the past, and some of them I still use while living in Portugal. You'll find them helpful. Subscribe so you know when the next Portugal content's coming out. From the not so sexy topics like this one, to everyday living in Portugal, to the Portugal fun and travel. And if you know anyone who is planning a move from the US to Portugal, share this video with them. I'm sure they'll find it valuable. All right, until next time, take care. Ciao.